This video has no pictures to watch, only a voice and a story. A story about something familiar, something that sits quietly in closets, something that visits living rooms on holidays, something we learned before we learned economics. In the dark, details emerge differently. Objects become symbols, habits become choices, and history feels less distant. In the dark, we are less distracted, less defended. Tonight, we take something ordinary and we hold it under a different light. A board, some paper money, a pair of dice, and a question. What exactly does this game teach us? Tonight, we enter the dark room. Most of us encounter Monopoly without ceremony. A cardboard box on a shelf, corner softened by time, the lid slightly bowed from years of pressure. Paper money that no longer lies flat. Properties sorted imperfectly. The board opens with a dry sound. A hinge of paper remembering its falls. Dice roll. Tokens move. A dog. A top hat. An iron. A small metal car. We choose who we want to be before we understand that we are entering. At first, it feels playful, almost innocent. You move in circles, you collect money for passing a line called go. You laugh when someone lands in jail. But something subtle is happening. The circle isn't neutral, it's structured. You're not wandering, you are orbiting ownership. Someone begins to own more. Someone begins to wait longer between turns. Someone begins calculating instead of laughing. The shift is quiet. The game does not declare now the system begins. It simply allows inequality to compound, and by the end there is silence. Not playful silence, heavy silence. Because everyone understands something without saying it. The game will not end until someone is eliminated, bankrupted. That silence is the key, because Monopoly was never just a game, it was a simulation. The Gilded Age. To understand Monopoly, we leave the table. We go back to the late 1800s, the Gilded Age. Railroads, barons, steel magnates, oil empires, Andrew Carnegie, John Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt, industrialists who did not simply produce goods, they produced control. Laissez-faire capitalism meant minimal regulation, minimal oversight, maximum accumulation. But something deeper was happening beneath the factories. Land was transforming from soil into leverage. Land became valuable not because it produced wheat, but because others needed access. Rent became the silent tax. You didn't need to build, you just needed to own. And if someone needed to pass through your square, they paid. This is the word that shaped James Magie. James Magie was not a billionaire. He was not an industrial titan. He was something quieter, a newspaper publisher, a political thinker, an anti-monopolist. He believed concentrated land ownership corrupted democracy. He traveled extensively with Abraham Lincoln. He witnessed a country wrestling with its own moral framework. And when he returned home, he did not bring wealth, he brought conviction. At his dinner table, debates were not about comfort, they were about justice. And across that table sat his daughter, listening. Elizabeth J. Magie was born in 1866. She inherited not money but ideology. She grew up understanding that economics is never neutral. At 14, she worked as a typist, not because it was fashionable, because it was survival. She owned her own home, maintained independence, refused to treat marriage as economic necessity. She once placed an advertisement offering herself as a young American slave, a satirical protest against wage inequality and women's dependence. She understood spectacle. She understood messaging. She understood that people ignore pamphlets but remember experiences. And she became obsessed by Harry George. George's book, Progress and Poverty, argued that poverty persists not because of laziness, but because land is monopolized. His single tax proposal suggested taxing land value instead of labor. Shift the burden upward, relieve the bottom. It was elegant, it was radical, it was largely ignored. Lizzie decided to translate theory into feeling. The Landlord's Game. In 1994, she patented the Landlord's Game. The patent was not casual, it was official, filed, recorded. She did not invent a toy, she invented an experiment. The board contained properties, rent, a jail, luxury tax, and two rule sets. This was critical. In the anti-monopolist version, when someone acquired land, the system rewarded everyone. Wealth circulated. In the monopolist version, you concentrated property, you extracted rent, you eliminated competitors. One version created stability, the other created collapse. Lizzie believed players would feel the injustice. She believed the experience would awaken conscience. She believed people, once exposed to the cruelty of monopolies, would reject them. She miscalculated one thing. Dominance is thrilling. The game spread informally. Handmade boards, Quaker communities, left-leaning academics. But over time, players favored the monopolist rules, because there is something intoxicating about watching others decline while you rise. The cooperative version faded, not because it was flooded, because it was less dramatic, and drama wins. Global irony. As monopoly travels, it does not remain American for long. It adapts. In the United Kingdom, Atlantic City disappears entirely. In its place, Mayfair, Park Lane, the Strand. British prestige replaces American seaside tourism. Mayfair becomes the new boardwalk. In France, Parc Place becomes Rue de la Paix. Boardwalks becomes Avenue des Champs-Élysées. The most expensive land becomes elegance. In Germany, players fight over Schlosshalle and Parkstrasse. In Spain, it's Paseo del Prado and Gran Via. Every country inserts its own geography of desire, and sometimes ideology intervenes. When the game arrived in fascist Italy in 1936, the regime despised the American names and demanded they be replaced. Emilio Ceretti, the Italian publisher, used streets from its own city of Milan, like Viale Giardini, and invented the most expensive space, Parco della Vittoria, which didn't actually exist. Monopoly's global reach eventually led it being printed in 47 languages and licensed in 114 countries, adapting to cultures worldwide. Even mistakes globalize. Marvin Gardens, a misspelling, survives across editions like a fossil. But the objective of the game remained identical: acquire, control, bankrupt. Capitalism translated flawlessly. The Great Depression. Now we return to 1932. America is exhausted. People are losing homes, the very thing the game revolves around. Banks are collapsing, and here comes a game where you cannot lose your house permanently, where bankruptcy is dramatic but reversible, where scarcity feels temporary. Monopoly becomes psychological relief, a rehearsal of control, in a world without it. And into these moments steps Charles Darrow. Charles Darrow is not an ideologue, he is a salesman, and salesmen read rooms. He sees something Lizzie did not: packaging, consistency, brand. He transforms a folk tradition into a standardized product. He refines typography, stabilizes rule, creates a visual identity. He understands that stories are better than mechanics, so the narratives become: unemployed man invents game, saves family, becomes millionaire. The American dream in cardboard form. And during the Great Depressions, America needed that myth, even if it wasn't true. When confronted with prior patents, Darrow does not dismantle the myth, because the myth is feeding his child. And here the story becomes morally complicated. He did lie, but he also provided medical care for a child with severe brain damage caused by scarlet fever. He lived comfortably, successfully, inside a system he did not invent but understood perfectly. He became a millionaire, playing Monopoly in real life. Parker Brothers saw profit. They bought the rights. They printed the myth. They paid Lizzie $500. No royalties. She believed her message would spread. Instead, her anti-monopolist rules were removed. The warning disappeared. Only the domination remained. In 1940, census, occupation, maker of games, income, zero. She died in 1948, quietly. During World War II, Monopoly became something no one could have predicted. Not entertainment, not ideology, an instrument to escape. The British Secret Service, specifically MI9, the division responsible for aiding prisoners of war, begins looking for ways to smuggle tools into Nazi prison camps. The problem is not sending packages, the problem is inspection. Every parcel sent to Allied prisoner of war is searched, opened, prodded, measured. Paper is unfolded, clothing is shaken, food is pierced, anything suspicious is confiscated. So MI9 turns into something ordinary, something harmless, something guards would not question, a board game. They partnered with John Waddington Ltd, the British company licensed to manufacture Monopoly in the United Kingdom. Waddington is not just a printer of games. It is also a printing company experienced in producing silk maps for military use. Silk is crucial. Paper rustles, paper tears, paper dissolves in water. Silk does not. It folds silently, it survives moisture. It can be hidden inside clothing without detection. So inside specially prepared Monopoly sets, escape maps are embedded within the layers of the board. Real currency is concealed inside stacks of fake money. Small compasses are hidden beneath tokens. Files are disguised as game pieces. To the casual eye, it's just Monopoly. To the trained prisoner, it's a survival kit. The sets are distributed through fake charitable organizations, aid groups sending moral-boosting games to capture British officers. German guards see cardboard, dice, property deeds. They see a capitalist pastime. They do not see coordinates. They do not see the border routes, safe hashes, rail lines. They do not see silk folded between paper. Inside a game about ownership and control, escape routes are waiting. Inside a simulation of economic dominance, the tools of freedom are hidden. The irony is almost unbearable. A game designed to demonstrate the cruelty of monopolies, rebranded to celebrate capitalism's triumph, now repurposed to undermine fascist imprisonment. The board becomes a map, the map becomes hope, and somewhere in a barracks behind barbed wire, dice roll quietly on wood, not for rent, not for victory, but for timing, for distraction, for survival. Monopoly, once a lesson about economic systems, becomes a weapon against confinement itself, freedom concealed inside cardboard, and perhaps, for the first time, the game truly serves the oppressed. Ralph Ansbach, The Truth Fights Back. In 1973, during another economic crisis, the oil shock, Professor Ralph Ansbach watches his son declare, "Monopolists are good," and something unsettles him. Because the games shape moral instinct. He creates anti-monopoly. Parker Brothers sues. 40,000 copies are destroyed in a Minnesota landfill. They offer him $500,000 to walk away. He refuses. He spends years in court. He uncovers Litz's 1904 patent. In 1983, he wins at the Supreme Court. The truth is legally restored. But culturally, monopoly remains unchanged, because culture resists correction. What monopoly taught us? Monopoly did not teach us economics. It taught us emotional normalization. It taught us that winning requires elimination. Ownership justifies extraction. Bankruptcy is entertainment. It taught children that monopolies are a skill, that concentration equals intelligence, that mercy is optional. Litzy built a warning. We turned into an aspiration. The circle. When you pass go, you collect the money. When you land on someone else's square, you pay. The board is a loop, but life isn't. Some players start with more, some never recover. The game simplifies what reality complicates, and maybe that's why we love it. It makes inequality feel clean. Some stories don't end, they circulate, like the board itself, folded, stored, waiting for another holiday, another rainy afternoon. The rules remain printed, unquestioned, and somewhere a child will learn that owning everything is the objective, and no one will tell them that the game was once a warning. This was Darkroom Diaries. Thank you for staying in the dark